Hello and welcome to Newswatch with me, Samira Ahmed. A confusing legal situation is made no clearer for some viewers by what they think of as inadequate translation. A row over not showing a cartoon image of Muhammad, but should the BBC have done so? And the day's news in 15 seconds. A new service is tried out for mobile and tablet users. Is this the future for BBC News? First, when important live events such as televised trials happen abroad, the BBC usually arranges its own simultaneous translation to ensure it gets the information as quickly and as accurately as possible. Such an occasion arose on Thursday night in Perugia, where prosecutors had appealed against the acquittal of Amanda Knox and Raffaella Sollecito on the charge of murdering Meredith Kercher in 2007, after the couple had originally been found guilty. Like much of the world's media, the BBC News channel was keenly awaiting the verdict.
Well, here we go. We have the senior judge coming along now. I think he will be the man who will deliver the verdict. And we do trust that we have simultaneous translation.
The application of Knox Amanda Marie and Sollecito Raffaele. They are going. The only today they have been. So they are going to be detained as a precautionary measure to prevent them leaving.
Well, we've had that verdict in Italian there. We did have a translation. With me is Marco Colombo, a London-based journalist and commentator, who can please explain to us exactly what we've heard there, Marco.
So, for what I understood in Italian, they're guilty.
The pair had indeed been found guilty again. Not that one would necessarily have known it from the simultaneous translation in the courtroom. Ben Wells was not impressed, feeling the presenter struggled to say what the verdict was and had to quote other news agencies to get a steer as to the result. Even then he didn't sound sure. After so many hours of knowing the verdict was coming, the BBC had plenty of time to organise a competent translator. And Jane Craig from Coventry agreed. The translation was appalling. Perhaps you need to revise your recruitment processes. Next, a question about impartiality in reporting the street protests against the government in Ukraine. They've been building since November and continued this week, despite the resignation of the country's Prime Minister and the offer of senior jobs to the opposition by President Yanukovych. The question arose around Sunday's News at 10 and a phrase used by Steve Rosenberg in this report from Kiev.
During the night, protesters besieged an exhibition centre near Independence Square. They'd received information that 200 police officers were stationed inside. They used fireworks and rocks to break in. The police retreated. Later, citizens streamed into the captured building. The only exhibition on today was a display of people power.
That last phrase came in for some criticism from viewer Steve Wolfe, who wrote, Steve Rosenberg, describing the takeover of the exhibition centre as people power, is value-laden reporting, as would be the phrase mob rule. Surely an experienced reporter should be able to find neutral terms. Or does the BBC have a hidden agenda of supporting anti-government action in Ukraine? There has been controversy this week centred on a Liberal Democrat prospective parliamentary candidate named Maajid Nawaz. He tweeted a cartoon featuring images of Jesus and Muhammad after a discussion about it on a BBC One show, The Big Questions. He's since faced a petition against his candidacy and death threats online because of a prohibition in Islam on images of the Prophet. On Wednesday, Newsnight took up the story behind Mr Nawaz's tweet last Sunday.
He'd just been a guest on the BBC's Big Questions programme. In the front row were two students wearing T-shirts showing the Jesus and Mo cartoons.
Would you like to see them?
Well, I mean,
yeah.
A debate then ensued about whether they had the right to wear them.
Do they have the right to wear those T-shirts?
Yes or no?
No. Why are you trying to offend a religious faith?
You're offending us.
See, I'm a Muslim. That T-shirt doesn't threaten me whatsoever. It doesn't threaten my God. It doesn't threaten my faith. It doesn't threaten the Quran. It doesn't threaten any aspect of my religion. I do not feel threatened by these gentlemen wearing that T-shirt.
It was the BBC's decision not to show a close-up of the T-shirts that prompted Maajid Nawaz to send the tweet.
But was the BBC right not to show a close-up of the T-shirts, either originally on The Big Questions or subsequently on Newsnight? No, thought a viewer called Carl, who sent a tweet of his own. Be a good start to ask Newsnight why they didn't show Jesus and Mo cartoon. Can't understand story without it. Well, we did ask and were given this statement. We took into account the fact that broadcasting the image could cause offence, and in our view there was no strong journalistic case for showing the image. We felt that our description of the image, a clip from the programme and the context provided from interviews throughout the report were enough for viewers to understand the story. Now, we know that the way people access news online is constantly changing. December last year was the first month in which the BBC News website was used more on mobile and tablet devices than on desktop computers. And the BBC is responding to that change with an interesting new experiment. For 38 years, the corporation provided news and information via the world's first teletext information service. By 2012, though, CFAX was no longer thought to be in the vanguard of technological innovation, and the BBC was looking for new ways of disseminating news to a social media generation. Enter the idea of sharing short videos, pioneered by YouTube and developed by Vine, a mobile app that enables its users to create and post 6-second video clips. And then Instagram, originally a photo sharing service where you can now record and share videos too, lasting for a much longer 15 seconds. Good for magic tricks and animals doing amusing things, but does this have any relevance to news? Well, yes, in recent days, the BBC has used footage posted on Instagram of protests in Kiev. And every day over a month's trial period, it's now publishing 3 15-second videos, either rounding up the day's news or focusing on a single story. So is this service pandering to shorter attention spans, or an acknowledgement that some people now want their news delivered in a different way? Well, with me to explain a little more about Instafax, its name is a combination of Instagram and CFAX, is the social media editor for BBC News, Chris Hamilton. Chris, welcome back to Newswatch. Now, some people will say a 15-second news item, and certainly a 15-second news summary, is too short to have any real value.
Well, I disagree with that, because I think you can convey information the same way we can see with a tweet, with a 1-minute radio summary. Obviously, 15 seconds is a lot shorter, but you can still, if you do it well, and I think we have a really good team behind it, you can convey information. And if you look at the comments people are leaving, they seem to really like it and appreciate what we're doing. The most interesting comments we've had are from people saying, I haven't used BBC News and I will now.
Well, let's have a quick look at a recent one, shall we? This is a summary of the day's events. So this takes 3 stories. It essentially gives a headline. In a way, you could argue it's quite old-fashioned. It's like a newspaper headline. There's no real audio. There's no kind of interview clips.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the idea is to convey in that brief 15-second period what are the top stories. Of course, that's only one type of Instafax that we're doing. We're also doing 2 others every day which focus on a particular story. So over the course of those 15 seconds, instead of 3 headlines, you get more information and more pictures on a particular story.
I mean, in the example that we saw, you say, talks on Syria, you see 2 faces, neither of them are identified. So I just wondered how much information it really gives, especially given that you then have to go somewhere else if you do want to follow up the stories. You don't click on that video, do you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously we're not doing this, it is an experiment, so we're trying out different ways of how it works, different types of information that we're presenting, but we certainly don't think that this is the sort of the future of news, and that obviously it's part of a whole range, everything from starting with a 15-second Vine all the way through to an edition of Panorama, and everything that lies in between, whether it's a website page, the Today programme, whatever it is, where people can find out more information. This is just one way of delivering a snapshot of the news in a way that the audience on that platform seem to appreciate and like.
I mean, it's interesting, that CFAX is the inspiration, because what has never been bettered since CFAX is the idea of you have a line which is a headline that gives you enough information, and you could click on that line of information and go into the story. And actually this isn't that simple. You have to go to the website, don't you, to follow up?
Yes, that's true. That's one of the drawbacks, certainly at the moment, of the platform, is the inability to link directly through. But that's part of the reason why we use the caption alongside to try and convey more information. I certainly agree with you about CFAX. It's one of the great inventions, I think, and became a sort of a stalwart warhorse of the newsroom, but was great at what it did, conveying information in a very short space of time.
I mean, the whole point of some of these things like Vine and Instagram is they're all about sharing content. internet and the power of that aggregating. You wouldn't share something like that 15-second summary of the news, would you?
I'm not sure. I think some people might if there was a story in there that they found particularly compelling or they wanted to share and talk about. But of course, remember that that's only one part of what we're doing here. So some of the other Instafaxes that focus on a particular story, I think, are very shareable. We did one just yesterday about a guy who's invented a full-size toy car, which looks exactly like a toy car, but it's full-size, drives at 70 miles an hour, he takes it on the road. That is exactly the kind of thing that people are going to want to share and like to share. Of course, need to emphasise that's not the kind of content we're doing on its own, as you've referenced. We also are covering whether it's Syria, climate change, science stories, or a whole mix of stories in there.
Chris Hamilton, thank you very much. Well, thank you for all your comments this week. If you would like to share your opinions on BBC News and Current Affairs or even appear on the programme, do call us on 0370 010 6676 or email newswatch@bbc.co.uk. And you can find us on Twitter @NewsWatchBBC, and do have another look at this or previous programmes on our website, bbc.co.uk/newswatch. That's all from us. We'll be back to hear your thoughts about BBC News coverage again next week. Goodbye.
Hello there. Today's heavy rain is clearing away, but we are far and away, a long way away from any calming down of the weather. More problems to come over the next 24 hours or so, all thanks to an area of low pressure, a deep one this, driving its way towards the UK. The weather front's already here. That's what brought today's rain clearing out into the North Sea, but more wet weather sweeping across Wales, through Northern Ireland and Scotland overnight. And here, particularly over the hills, there will be some snow, even down to relatively low levels. Could just be a covering here and there. As the wet weather eases off and skies clear, it'll turn quite chilly. And yes, there is the potential for things to turn a bit icy for Saturday morning. Temperatures will, in towns and cities, generally stay a touch above freezing, but certainly in rural areas, we could get down to freezing. It'll be a coldish start to Saturday. But the biggest problems on Saturday will be the strength of the wind, picking up from the west through the course of the day, and they provide the risk of further flooding. There are 9 severe flood warnings in force issued by the Environment Agency. 08459881188 is the flood line number. And as I say, there could be some further problems because the strong winds will be combining with some very high tides. These are the high tides around the coast of Wales and southwest England. One in the morning, one again in the evening. And with those strong winds, likely to be some very big waves and the possibility of coastal flooding. Environment Agency is stressing this is a life-threatening situation. Please don't go to the promenades to look. It'll be very blustery with gusts of 60, maybe 70 miles an hour. It's a blustery day wherever you are, and it's a day of showers. Those showers will have some wintry elements to them, some hail, some sleet and some snow. By the afternoon, the snow confined to the hills of northern Britain. Too many showers getting to the east, some drier spells here, but elsewhere expect those showers to come and go on those strong winds, which will make it feel on the chilly side. Sunday is a calmer day. It's still a breezy day. There's still plenty of showers around, but not as many showers. Overall, a better chance of seeing some lengthy spells of sunshine. The winds a touch lighter and it'll feel a touch warmer. We might get to double figures. However, before we get to Sunday and the weather calming down, the main hazards, just to reiterate tonight, problems with snow, particularly the hills of Scotland and Northern Ireland, could turn icy. And then Saturday, there's strong winds, bringing the risk of further flooding. There are numerous flood warnings in force and plenty of weather warnings as well. You can always view them, bbc.co.uk/weather.
Rivalry. It's in our blood.
Born in many times, in many places, of many things.
So strong it can push a man to victory, or cast him into the abyss of defeat.
And every year we wait for the rivalry that runs deeper than any other. It's not just about rugby. It's about nations. Your nation. Because our fiercest rivals are those who are closest. The Six Nations, rugby's greatest championship, starts tomorrow with Wales v Italy at 2, live on BBC One.
This is the BBC News at 9. Tonight, yet more wild weather.